Good morning, John Mashni here. I'm here with my great friend, Jerome Vierling. This is, honestly, anytime I get to chat with Jerome, I feel like it's the best day ever. So thank you for joining us, Jerome. You want to say hello real quick?
Hello. I feel the same, John.
Well, let me just give a quick intro of you because I think if anyone spends regular time with me, they probably have heard your name just because it comes up often. But we just, for someone that's never met you, just let me give, like, I would say, relatively quick intro. So we actually went to middle school together and high school together in Mason, Michigan. We played basketball on the same 8th grade basketball team. Today, I don't know if I think you still have some hoop skills. I don't really, my hoop skills are just massively dwindled, reserved to, 7-foot rims playing with my, daughters and my son, who's, actually taller than me. I reached the pinnacle of my height in 8th grade. I was 5'7". I'm, less shorter than that now, but didn't we both play point guard? Where we
Yeah.
We were both play point guard.
You were taller than me then. I caught up. We're like eye to eye now. Yeah.
We went to high school together. I think kind of miraculously, we reconnected at our 10-year high school reunion. I think you had become a Christian. You started to make music and Christian hip hop music. And you were just so passionate about like creating, but also using the music as a way for outreach, right? To reach people. And so we connected through a ministry that you started called Sounds Good. And I think it was a super fun time. We were kind of bootstrapping a ton of stuff, building cool stuff. We created together. And at that time, I think you were doing concerts like 100 a year or just all over, right? And just multiple times a month, you were out performing and doing outreaches to try to reach people with your music, with the gospel message. And then at the same time, raising money and running a nonprofit ministry. And one of my favorite stories are you going to prisons and performing. Like, that's just crazy stuff. And some of the stories you told me are just awesome. And then I think, what is it, 2015? When did you start a church? What year was it?
Yeah, 2015.
2015, started a church, and now you're lead pastor at City Life Lansing here in Lansing, Michigan. And just done amazing things, I would say, for the city with some of the programs through City Life, including, the Love the City Week, and just being an incredible presence in the school system in Lansing, in Lansing, in the inner city. It's cool. It's amazing. And we've been friends the entire time. It's been just awesome to learn from you, spend time with you, laugh with you. And I would say you're someone that I probably wouldn't do anything major or even minor in my life before I was like, Jerome, what do you think? What's the scoop? So just really blessed to be able to chat with you and just share some of the fun things that we talk about privately. Now we're going to talk about it a little more publicly. Maybe not everything, but
we still have to have a classified file.
That's right. We do have some acronyms that we share that nobody else knows, right? Which used to drive my assistant crazy because she was like, what does NPFJ mean? Like, that's private. We can't. Right.
That's good.
So
that's good.
Well, Jerome, that's an intro, on my end of you, and hopefully, there's tons I left out, but I would just say,
well, hey, I'm humbled by everything you shared, and I share the same sentiment. Is you have been a huge blessing in our life, my life personally, but even our families. There's so many different things we've learned from you that, we apply in our day to day and impact. I mean, even as practical as when I turned 40, you got me the best knife I had in the kitchen, and we still that leveled up our knife game. So there's so many different things that we've implemented, and so I'm grateful our journey started way back when in middle school, and then miraculously somehow got back together and picked up the baton at the 10-year reunion. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And let me ask you a question, because I think this is where, I think sometimes people try to, for whatever reason, they put certain people in a box, right? This person's a pastor, or with my end might be this person's a lawyer, right? And then their whole view of us is filtered through that initial label. And I think like one of the things I learned about you early on was like that those labels are just not, they're just not enough to fully describe who you are. So one thing I'm interested in is like how you balance like following and being a follower. Cause I know for a very long period of time, huge part of your life, you were trying to fall under other leaders. Like you were working with other leaders and you were very differential, right? And you might say you still are, but how do you balance the desire to be a leader and have people follow you, or not even have people follow you, but carry out a vision that you have versus like, hey, I want to learn and I want to grow and be someone else under somebody else's leadership. How have you thought about that so far in your life?
Right out the gate, there is a level of just the elephant in the room. Anytime you tell somebody you have a title, which is lawyer, pastor, I mean, that puts us in the least trusted professions in the world, or enough head trash that people have, that people are like a little over, they come with so much stimulation, and that can be helpful and it can also be harmful. And so the goal is never to just speak to that only. I really believe just being authentic. And that's something that you live, we try to live. But it's been a narrative in my whole life, being a white kid named Jerome, 5'6", who played basketball, who loved basketball. I found myself in cross-cultural settings often, and then falling in love with rap music in the late 80s. And then early 90s, I'm listening to Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet in Mason, Michigan. And so the unlikely story of just being a hybrid everywhere I went, and then picking up rap music, and then try to go into Detroit in the 90s and battle rapping when Eminem was big. And that was just like a huge part of my life. But unfortunately, like went off the train tracks and got into some really dark stuff. And then I had the dramatic life changed at around about 22 years old. And I met you back a few years later than that. And just that repair in my life that was happening, then I got set in motion to enter another profession that is fully stereotype loaded, which selling cars. So when I was selling cars, everybody's like, they hate a car salesman. But I was trying to build my whole life on integrity, honesty, transparency. I wanted to live completely different. So I just realized, man, if I address people directly and push past whatever perceptions they may have, that you really can't judge a book by its cover. And then when people start to get close enough, because I think distance distorts, but proximity and being close breeds compassion. And if they can characterize a lawyer, they might have met one. They could say, I met a pastor, but they didn't meet John. They didn't meet Jerome. And we can address that with love and just get close. And then they realize, wow, it's different. Just like you can't base every university experience or every classroom experience or your previous person you dated, that every person is like that. So we don't take the bait. We just initiate and try to pursue with love. But so that became a journey of just, hey, even some of the stereotypes and titles are uncomfortable for me. It's not that I'm afraid to say I'm a pastor. I just think it doesn't tell the full story. I used for a season team lead or under shepherd. And because Jesus is the chief shepherd, he's building his church. None of us are fully in control. And ultimately we're servants, which then segues into the other thing you had mentioned, which is, okay, how do you go from supporting a vision to then being somebody who's sharing a vision, and then people are following a vision? And I think first and foremost, like the first thing that came to mind was, in my story, I know everyone's on their own journey, but in my story, Easter Sunday, I showed up at church and didn't even know it was Easter Sunday and the significance of that. Heard the gospel, responded, and I was in the back row of the balcony. And I think at some level, what happened was I went from the back row of the balcony to now speaking in a pulpit, people would, and so how in the world did that thing happen? Well, I started to say, I don't want to be somebody who's pursuing power or being in control. The way on and the way in is the same way that I need to live. So if Jesus served, Jesus laid down his life, therefore Jerome should be a servant as well. So then you just add value and just showing up and saying, man, I'm here to be a public servant and I'm here to consider others higher than myself. Now, is that challenging? Did that wreck my flesh at times and frustrating with my ego? Absolutely. But then you realize, man, how can I complete and be a part of the team? So I think my sports background really helped give a framework, because then it's like, I believe in the cause of loving God and loving people. Well, let me add value. And so then that journey of just adding value, I think then you transition where if you have dreams and you have vision, then it becomes a natural cycle that you graduate to where people start to then say, wow, I've seen the credibility. I've seen faithfulness. I've watched stewardship of a little. And now I'm intrigued about what is being casted or the dreams that we had. And then people started following that. But I think first and foremost, we can't ever expect people to follow if we haven't followed and served ourselves.
Yeah. And honestly, I think when I think about you, you have so much background that probably would surprise people, especially if they start with the pastor Jerome, right? So if they say, oh, Jerome's a pastor. It's like, I think about you go performing hundreds of concerts, right? I think about you writing music. Like you literally, you're sitting down and you're not just writing the words, you're producing songs, you're producing an album. I think about you almost like in builder mode where you built a music studio, right? As part of that, right? And it's beautiful, right? Like it was a beautiful, you raised money, you did sales. Like, and I think that alone is so, amazing lessons you get just from being in a sales position where you got to sell or you don't, you can't take care of yourself or your family. And then at the same time, now you started a church, not just the pastor of a church, you started it, right? Which I think there's two different things there, where one is you're responsible and you're, like you said, shepherding, but then the other side is like, you're starting from nothing, right? Of just building a team, building people. And then even from a business sense too, like there's so much like in your background where, I think there's like a weight, and that's how I treat it. Is like when you say something and you think about something, there's a weight to it that I think I respect. I just don't, maybe not everyone in first glance, right, gets that same weight. But I hear it certainly. And I think to me, that's amazing, right? Like, that's why I think you're someone that I trust to get advice from and also just to open up to. I feel like you're considering all the different sides, which is not always the case with people. And I think it's awesome, and I love, like, who would you say people that you followed, like, or maybe you currently follow, like, how do you treat that as someone, like, because you're leading a church, but how do you still say, like, I'm still following someone?
Well, I love the angles in the perspective that you just shared, which is there's so many different arenas that I find myself in, but you as well. And we might be limited to one of the arenas we're in. But that never tells the full story. We all have our family origin, we have our background, we have our shared life experiences. And then that all then is being a cumulative impact of how we would even serve and show up in an arena. So with that, one of the phrases that you've taught me is, hey, put on the white belt, always be a student, and show up when the sensei, no matter where you're at in any room, always be learning. And people aren't going to know this about you, but you're a black belt. You can play the piano. You got a film degree, law degree. I could keep going on. You're the valedictorian of our class. And so being around people like you that are so expansive and there's it's like you're not a subsect of a subsect of a subsect. You're in many different spheres of life. And that exposure in that wide range of learning experiences and settings, it shapes and forms us. And the formation then of how then I move in day to day, whether it's my parents were in sales, so then I'm getting that. Obviously, there's a hard wiring and a gift mix that each one of us have, but the EQ side of us, the quotient of emotional intelligence, it grows in different ways. Well, a family divorce in our story that now I relate with people's pain in a unique way. My mom was running a magazine in Lansing, and then seeing the business side of that and getting to write sports with that right out of high school. But then getting in a lot of trouble when people hear someone was dealing with some level of addiction or bad life choices. They have a stereotype. They'll primarily think of somebody they see on the corner asking for money. But I was like a high functioning addict, if you will, business by day and partying by night. Well, then that all shapes and informs. So to your point, it just became this long journey that I didn't know. And I think sometimes we forget that every season has a reason. And there's we're being equipped and developed, and we're being just transformed that can impact people no matter where we've been, even if I didn't like it. There's a quote I love. It's like the teacher presents itself when the student's ready to learn.
Yeah.
In most of my life, I resisted the teacher. Forget school. This is boring. Who invented this? Why is this happening this way? Someone tell me the why behind the what. Where's Simon Sinek? What is going on? I need to know why this exists. But then looking back, it's once I humbled myself and then humbled myself to revisit some of my past experiences. Ooh, there was lessons there.
Yeah.
So then that makes me show up and serve people in a different way. So every way is creative and expansive. And I think so much of our life we see is not in harmony, where it's fragmented and it's in the one size spheres. Well, we're a lawyer here, and then we're a husband here. And it's no. What would it look like if there's continuity, there's connective tissue? And then the artist side of me just thinks that way, where we can show up and do great business, and we can show up and do great art. And doing great business is an art. So there's a science and there's an art and there's a nuance to everything. And then some people, if we're only thinking linear, they're like, okay, I get it. Just tell me what we need to do. And I'm like, I think we lose some of the fun. We lose some of the curiosity. So that's a little bit. Yeah, the authenticity. So that has me thinking as you're talking. And then I just land with this thought is, in following and keep serving, that's never ends. Meaning I still want to grow and develop. And if I posture myself as the smartest person in the room, or I'm in charge, or lead with a title that leads to entitlement, man, nobody wants that. Did we want that as kids? We didn't want to be told what to do. We want to be invited in to create. And then we realize, oh, that's a God-given, now you got me going, but it's a God-given, it's destiny inside of us all.
Yeah. Here's a question you made me think of when you said put on the white belt. Sometimes you're in a room and you say hey, I'm putting on the white belt, but there's black belts in the room, or people who think they have black belts, if that makes sense. And so I'm just curious.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's and I just am curious, the balance of having a vision and leading a team, but then also going into rooms where you maybe you're saying I'm wearing the white belt, but there's a black belt in the room, and it could be hostile, it could be unknown in terms of motive or intent. How do you posture yourself where you're still trying to be an advocate for you, your team, your purpose, but you're also in a room where there's let's just say unclear motives, right? Hey, how do you approach that? Because I feel in so many cases, I could think of examples, but just how do you approach that?
No, I think you're speaking to something we all are dealing with at some level. When somebody has power and authority that they either have taken, they're given, they're asserting, or they're just in an org chart higher than us. So when we walk into the room, they might be flexing with their black belts, and sometimes it could be justified, but the real black belts, you don't know. So those that are instantly asserting it, it's that should instantly perk us up. I tell our team, you will know when you're in the presence of a pro. and you feel it. They don't have to say it. They're just so poised and they're so confident, and they often are the last one to speak. And so those that are speaking first instantly, I'm not condemning them or judging them, but I think how I postures myself in the room is through the framework I always try to live and teach our team, which is love, listen, learn, lead. So first, the love component is, okay, love, that, that sounds ethereal and fluffy. It's like, no. Let me show up curious. Let me show up loving with empathy that already starts to then soften my approach, my demeanor. And then I'm able to listen. And then when I'm listening, well, okay, there's active listening, participating, not just keeping my mouth shut, but there might be times where you inject and ask a question because you're trying to learn, to comprehend. And then as I comprehend, it's like, even if I disagree with what's happening, well, now I have enough intel. I've made questions my profession, and now I'm going to engage and lead. So there is a moment where we also have to flex and say, man, that is contrary to my value system, which is why I think it's so important to know who we are, why we exist, and what in the world we're doing. And some of us, we just got to keep doing that work, revisit that work. And that's done alone. It's done with counsel. It's done with mentors. And then if we make value-based convictions, we show up in an arena and we can instantly say, oh man, that's a decoy. That doesn't sound like a real McCoy. Man, that's contrary to my ethics. That man, I got to compromise in that moment. And I think this is harmful. I think this person is just out of pocket. And then how we approach them, depending on what we've learned from that setting, now we got to lead. And sometimes it can be tactful with the question, and how we change our tone. So that's how I think about it. And I'm not always great at it. I'm really like, there were seasons I was too intense, but now I think I'm posturing myself more in a contemplative way, but still not just, don't mistake the silence for compliance.
And I think too, like some of the signs, you look for, like the person that has to always immediately have some sign of like dominance, right? Or whatever it might be, posturing like authority. I love what you said. Most of the time, if someone's truly influential or has authority, they don't have to say it, right? They don't have to say a word sometimes. It's just posture. It's just, how they treat people, right? And I even love what you said about love first. Like love is the first thing, right? Love, then listen. And I mean, that's, it actually reminds me, one of the coolest things I remember about being around your team, and this was even at Sounds Good, one of the things you always told people was always leave a place better than you found it.
Come on.
And so I remember in Sounds Good, you would have the team always clean it up and not be in the group where if you go rent a space, the vendor would say like, oh, they left all this stuff, or it's like, no, you always leave it better than you found it. And I think to me, that's amazing. Like, how did you come up with that phrase or that principle?
I think we all have a journey of when we either complied or we didn't. And when I think back to when I wasn't complying to even my parents' request, as practical as I remember my mom would say, hey, go out and shovel the sidewalk when it snows. And I was resistant, hesitant. Now I've done some work in my life to recognize, okay, I was definitely impacted by the divorce. I was, bitter. I wasn't getting better. I was being angry, not having that male presence there now in the household. I was just, rebelling. And so I just wouldn't go out and shovel. But then once I realized, okay, one, that's not honoring to my mom. That's not honoring to life. And it's not stewarding what I have. This idea that the grass is greener over there. No, the grass is greener where I water it. And each one of us have a land to till. We have a race to run. In that perspective, I really believe, I'm grateful for like a divine kiss from heaven. But then to you have to partner and choose that thought and keep growing. And I mean, bro, you're a part of that in my life, of just showing me ethics and character when no one's looking. Like I was thinking about you this morning, and I'm like, man, your story is a life of privately enduring and publicly serving. When I think of John Mashni, it's like no one knows he's been privately enduring. The dude has deep endurance, and his character and ethic is it just on full display all the time. And most people don't know it because you're always adding value. You're leaving the place better than how you found it. So it's coming across paths of guys like yourself, and then the ultimate one. When I look in the scriptures, I see Jesus leaving it better than how he found it. But it goes back to say, man, I wish I would have honored my mom better in those days. I wish I would have honored my dad better, the coach better, the teachers better. And then you think, well, every place is a reflection of us. Everywhere we go, wherever we're at, it's not transactional. And if we see ourselves as only consumers, we tell our kids riding around sometimes, we'll be like, hey, do you want to consume or do you want to contribute? And they're like, I want to contribute. It's like, okay, well, we're going to contribute to the space. We're going to pick up the trash of what we saw real quick. It's like, oh, dang, Dad, but it's real. It's like, wouldn't you wish that? It's the golden rule. Come on. Do unto others as you wish they would do unto you. Is it not that?
It's beautiful. It reminds me too, someone we both know. I saw him at a church that he didn't go to, right? And it still impacts me. He was welcoming people to the church that he didn't even go to. Like he was acting like he was like a long time member. And I was just like, what are you doing? And he's like,
so good.
No, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm just here to make it better. Like, yeah, it's like, I've never been here before, but I just want people to feel welcome. I'm like, no, but you're new. Like, I mean, you're not new, but it's just like, you came here as a guest and you're just welcoming people. I just thought that was one of the coolest things. Just reminded me of that. Just like, and that's, again, why I just have immense respect for you, not just personally, but like the people that follow you demonstrate that, and you're duplicating that, right? Or you're reproducing that. And I think that's amazing. Like, even I tell my kids, we got to leave it better than we found it. Not that they listen entirely, but even my own wife, blows me away just when she'll be running. She'll come back from a run with trash in her hands, or she'll take a bag, like a little plastic,
incredible.
And she'll bring back trash on her run. She's like, I just got tired of seeing it. And no one was picking it up. It's like on the road or in the back country.
So good.
She'll be picking up stuff. It's like, I just think we need way more of that. People that don't say like, well, that's not my trash. It's like, well, true, but you're a person that lives in this space, right? Lives in this community. Like if it's who's trash? I mean, it's not your trash, but it's like next to your house, right?
It's perspective, right? I mean, it was the practice of gratitude has helped me so much, because you think of, okay, what am I thankful for? And what am I thankful for yesterday? What am I thankful for today? One of the things I always like to think about is like somebody says, man, no one did nothing for me. No one ever did anything for me. And like, look, we all been through some serious stuff, and we all have our pain that we could share. But we all have been gifted a planet, which is a fascinating perspective that somehow we don't even know if there is any other life within galaxies, but yet we have a planet to steward. That is so neat. And I'm not saying I do it the best. I get challenged by what I throw away at times, or how many Amazon boxes packages I get shipped to my house. But this idea, like if you see the trash there, it's like, man, well, we're connected to every space and place we're in, and it communicates. And as we cultivate, like I like thinking about, how do I keep the kid alive? And I think you do this so well, John, where, you write children's books. Most people wouldn't even know that about you. Like, what kind of lawyer writes children's books? And what kind of lawyer works on rap music videos? We've done many projects together and been a part of a storyboarding. And well, as kids, we're so creative, but something happens. We just kind of we don't even utilize that gift anymore. And if we think like creative as we look out, whether it's trash or whatever, that's not the Legos we wanted to build. That's not how we wanted stuff to look and feel. But I think we get so pushed down by life, society, the news, and there's a lot to be negative about. But we need to tap into another wavelength, and then we say, oh, let's leave it better than how we found it. And I think that applies to everything. Like I'm talking, when we buy a house, do we leave it better than how we found it? When we get a car, do we try to leave it better than how we found it? Are we being honest? Do we see it as generational? pass the baton, legacy. So that's the kind of stuff I'm challenged by in this season too, is what's behind that drywall? Did I leave that repair for somebody else?
Yeah. Here's one thing I'll just say. This is why I not just appreciate you, but I view you as someone that is just so rare, right? You're like the unicorn of, maybe not the unicorn, but, just you are in some ways one of the most rare kinds of people that I've met in my life. Like your ethics and your morals, you don't say, what's the rule here? And I'm just going to follow the rule. You're like, no, there's a higher power and I'm subject to it. And I am holding myself accountable to what I believe is like the highest power. Right. And I think this is one reason why, and I'm going to share something that I learned from you that I think, I'm trying to even think if I've ever seen this anywhere. And I honestly can't think of it. So and I learned this, and I think working with you, and we've had these discussions where a lot of people have relationships because they benefit from it, right? Whether it could be professional, right? It's like, hey, someone works for me. I like that they work for me. I pay them, or they're a benefit to the organization, and it's a win for me. But you truly embody the principle where it's like it's got to be a win-win. And what I think is rare, and almost I've never seen it, and again, I probably have, it's just I don't have it cataloged in my memory, but you will make sure it's win-win. And if it's win for you and not win for the other person, you will stop it. And that to me is honestly one of the greatest moral choices that I think I've witnessed as a person, right? In my life, like just saying like, hey, we're benefiting as an organization, but this is not the right thing for you. And so we're stopping it. And like, that's just so rare. And honestly, you know what's funny? This is what's funny. I can't even think of anybody else where I've seen do this as much as you. The only other example that I can think of is from the movie Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dude, and this is the example, because some people might listen to that and think, what is John talking about? And let me tell you what I'm talking about. This is my example, because I cannot think of another example in real life. So, I used to love the movie Conan the Barbarian. I probably still love it. I just haven't seen it in a long time. But John Milius, was a hero. So there's a scene in this movie where Conan gets taken from his family, right, and sold into slavery. Okay. And then they find out he's actually like ripped because he pushed around this giant thing in the middle of the desert, that's how he became, Conan. And then he becomes a gladiator, but he's a slave. And so he has like a slave owner, and this slave owner's making all this money from him being a gladiator. But he realizes like, hey, I'm getting rich, but this guy's in a cage. He's literally in a cage, right? So in the middle of the night, I don't remember it's the middle of the night, but basically there's this scene in the movie where the slave owner cuts the chain off Conan and frees him. He's like, you need to be free. Like I'm making all this money, but it's not good for you. You're a slave. And like, that is the literal example that I think of like somebody who has someone else in a cage and is making all this money, but it's not the right thing for the person in the cage. And like, that's the example. I've seen you do it multiple times. And I would even say nobody knows that you did it. And people might question you. And I know that they question you. Why did you do that? Right? Why did you make that choice? And you never say, I guess I haven't heard you publicly at least say it wasn't right for them, or it's like, it's more of just internally, you have a high sensitivity to that. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. So I just wanted to say, one, amazing. And two, like, bro, how do you make that choice? That just it's so rare. I think most of the people that I've been around in organizations will say, oh, we're making money. This person, they're doing their thing. If they didn't like it, they would leave. Right? That's what they would say. But we're making money. and this is in a business context, but it could be any context, but it's like, hey, we're making money. It's good on our end. If they didn't like it, they would come talk to us, or they would just leave. And the sad part to me is they don't, because they're like a cage or something. So I'm just curious, how do you think about that? How do you process that? Tell me what you think.
My mind is, well, one, just emotional listening to you, share all that, just on a personal level. Like my prayer would be that I keep doing that. My prayer, I don't know if I've done it the best, but I pray that I have tried my best. And it really comes down to a perspective. Like, when I'm first thinking about, man, I know what it's like to feel like you're the underdog, or you're the one overlooked, or, just there's key moments in my life that shape me, being in a trailer park for part of our family story, and the way that is viewed in certain, at school, or so you start to recognize, okay, there's a class gap, there's a cultural gap, there's a racial gap, there's an ethnic gap, and you see all these gaps just everywhere. And then when you're on the other side of the equation and you're just like losing, you see, your family working 2 jobs, you see trying to make it, you're about to be evicted. There's just so many stupid moments that were so challenging. You think, okay, not on my watch, if I get the opportunity to serve, how do we create holistic win-win deals? So I'm radically influenced, whether somebody has faith or not. My worldview is one of that God is in control. And when I look at how God moves and operates, he sends his son Jesus, and his son Jesus becomes the fulfillment of freedom for people, captivity free, that money, how we do interactions and deals, it needs to benefit humanity, and we're connected to the world we're in. So how do we bring shalom? That the idea of peace is physical, it's spiritual, it's emotional, that each person's a whole being, and no one is a pawn on a chessboard. And there is a level of, well, what you work, you get paid for, and the market needs to dictate how what the job pays, and the economics need to make sense. But there's also a truth that we have to look in the mirror and give an account and say, yeah, but is this shalom? Is this peace? Is this jubilee where people are set free? And even from a biblical view, that the 50th year, the land would reset, captives would be set free, debt would be canceled out. Why? Because you can keep domineering and pushing people down. Now, some people, when we think and hear about this, just like instantly dismiss it and say, yeah, but that's just so hard. We can't do that for everything, for everyone. So therefore, we're not going to do it. And I would say, okay, but we can do something for someone, and that could feel like everything to them. So how do we do for one what we wish we could do for all? So I really think it comes back to that underdog story for myself, and then trying to be a part of that in all things we do. And how can we do that more in the future would be exciting to explore. How can we do that? Anything that we get to touch, that we get to be a part of, that people, when they enter our organizations or they serve on our teams or they get a paycheck, they realize, man, we're thinking about you past what this dollars say. And when I win, you win. When you win, I win. And they feel that, they see that. There's real, I think the term equity has been co-opted in our society right now in unique ways, but there's real equity that people can see, that they're vested, they're thought about, they're cared for. And yeah, so I don't know, it comes from a deep place. So it's a great, yeah. And I think, well, one thing too is recognizing, this is what's so key, recognizing that I have a bias to protect myself. I have a bias that I want to win. And there's a power dynamic already in place if I have authority and I'm over somebody. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I'm still responsible for whatever role for the mission and for the organization, but the person is the mission and the organization as well. So you can steward both, but it's leaning into it all instead of just, oh, it doesn't matter. Show me the bottom line.
Well,
Like, no, the bottom line is people.
let me say too, I think someone could interpret what I said as, oh, Jerome just doesn't care about winning. He just cares about the people. And I think that is completely false. Like, I think you are ambitious, driven, competitive. You are taking winning into your calculation. It's not like you're oblivious to it and you're like, we get the ship's going down and I don't care. I'm just going to do what's right. It's like, no, I think that's not true. I think you are focused on whatever victory is in the moment and in that particular situation. And you still will do the hard thing that's not the best for, let's say, you, but is the best for the person. And that's what I think is magical about it.
It's a tension that keeps me up at night. You know, how do you steward the organization? Because it's a real living, breathing thing. How do you steward yourself? How do you steward your family? How do you steward the people? And then there's certain seasons. One mentor, he told me, you know, I called him up. I was just really dealing with some challenging just decisions to be made and felt like we were just spread a little too thin. And he said, there's seasons to lengthen and there's seasons to strengthen. So there's seasons to reinforce home base, if you will, and get the reserves stronger and more in a surplus. And there's other seasons where we need to lengthen our impact, our reach, our mission, our why. And it really comes back to that individual, who am I and who's the organization? And then what are we doing? Most of the time it's like, how much money do I want to make? Okay, what do we need to do? And then there's who I am. And the equation is backwards. Like, who in the world am I? Who's our organization? Why do we exist? Because then we can say we do this, we don't do that. And when something shady comes up or that just doesn't fit our North Star, we're out, you know? And that's why those convictions beforehand matter. And sometimes we got to reset and stop. I think sometimes I've went too far, lengthened too far. And then it's like, ooh, I got to reset. All right. Ooh, I got to call up a new mentor. I got to read another book. You know, call guys like yourself. Hey, what are you reading? What do you got in this lesson? And so that work never ends. In one sense, it's job security, but the other side is it's like exhausting.
Well, even if you have that North Star and those principles, it sometimes people think, oh, I have that principle, and that means every choice is easy. It's like, no, I don't think that's true at all. It's like there's still hard choices. It's just you actually have a principle that you can go back to and lean on. But that doesn't mean the choices get easier. I think they still get harder. It's just you have to decide, are you sticking to it or not? And it takes a rare person to cut through it and say, well, this is the right thing, right? It might be hard if you think about it, because there's all these things like, oh, there's a lot of money, a big check, big numbers, commas, stuff like that. But then you look back and you have a principle that you can follow. So I think what's beautiful, and I'll just, end this point on that, is just like, I've seen it in your life multiple times. I've been in the conversations multiple times, I feel like. And to me, it's amazing. That's why I said, I don't know if I've ever witnessed it ever outside of the context of Jerome. And that's just beautiful. And I'll just say, that's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah. Well, hey, we all need grace. I definitely haven't batted 1,000. So I thank God for his grace. No, it's just good. It's all relative. When you were saying that too, like even when you're stewarding more, I've been using the term stewarding because it's really, I'm not in control. I'm not the owner. I'm a manager and I'm given account. So account, many people say, I want to be accountable. Well, or hold me accountable. That's a part of it. I would say that's maybe 10% of it. Hold me accountable. So therefore I'm going to give an accounting. Here's where I'm at. What do you see? What blind spots? So let me give an account and based upon the convictions. But the more pain we're willing to endure, the more we can serve people and grow in the commas, the numbers, the teams. It just is all relative. But that's why it's going to be so important as we're growing with the organization. And there's moments where many people even listening to this probably felt, man, almost like having a breakdown and getting help in those key moments, because that's an opportunity for growth to level up. So we're going from glory to glory, one level to another level, just like in a video game. You play the end boss and they just keep getting more challenging, but you got more weapons for the next level. So new levels, new devils, but another space, more grace. Come on.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Well, hey, I think we got to wrap it up, but anything you would say, one, thank you for talking, and we could probably talk for 4 more hours and we'd never run out of stuff. We'd eventually get to like sports and movies, and we'll cover that another time. I think we should pick a movie we both love, or you want me to watch. Still got to watch Tenet, by the way. So
the first time I came to Tenet, and then Tron, the new Tron's dropping right around the corner. So thinking about that soundtrack by 9 Inch Nails.
Well, I think you watch RRR, and then
yep. I know I owe you RRR. You owe me Tenet, and we'll leave people with that.
Well, anything you want to say? I know your church is City Life Lansing, but anything you want to just have as like a final thought for people, like takeaway or just follow up?
I think if someone's listening to this, they might say, okay, I'd just like to know more, maybe about you or me. You can look at, johnmashni.com, jeromevierling.com. There's a new project on there called One. You can listen, you can watch it, you can read it. And that's not a plug for me and how cool the project is. I just really believe it's a continuation of this conversation where you get to grow and realize, wait, I'm one with everything and everyone around me, whether I want to admit that or not. And so that's the heartbeat of that project, is to create oneness with people in a way that is real and authentic. And so I would just leave with that kind of thought is, man, let's make our moments count. Let's do for one what we wish we could do for all. And as this great individual I know, he always says there's no ordinary moments. And that individual is the one and only John Mashni. So thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast. This is an honor.
Yeah, thanks. And that One is an album plus more, right? So just so people know, they can hear some of the music and there's videos and there's follow up and all that kind of stuff. So really cool. They want to hear some of the music. So, well, Jerome, great to be here. Amazing to see you as always. And I look forward to chatting every single time.
Oh, always a blessing. Love you, bro. Peace.